strap in. We're about to step into the squared circle, the world of professional wrestling.
And trust me, this isn't your average everyday wrestling match we're talking about.
No, this is a deep dive into a Hall of Fame induction that's got the whole wrestling world in a chokehold, fans going at it in the comments. Yeah, it's a real slugfest out there.
Yeah, and for good reason. I mean, this isn't just about whether someone deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or not. This controversy gets right to the heart of, some age-old tensions in wrestling, like the whole talent versus connections thing.
It's like someone hit the self-destruct button and everyone's scrambling to pick a side. So we've got Triple H, the game, 14-time world champion, key player in that legendary Attitude Era. I mean, the guy's practically wrestling royalty, right?
Absolutely, and now he's running the whole show as the head honcho of WWE, and he's married to Stephanie McMahon, daughter of the former WWE CEO, Vince McMahon. Talk about a power couple.
Yeah, there's so many layers to this. It's like an onion.
It really is. And to peel back those layers, our deep dive today is focused on this pretty fiery article from TJR Wrestling, where Jim Ross, he's the iconic voice of wrestling, right? He jumps in to defend Triple H.
Oh, yeah, good old JR. He never shies away from speaking his mind, does he? He basically says that anyone who's out there claiming that Triple H got an easy pass to the Hall of Fame because of his wife, well, they're spewing, let's just say he uses some very colorful language.
Oh, he does. But, that's part of why fans love him. He's blunt, he's passionate. And that quote we're talking about, it really gets to the heart of his whole perspective, Jim Ross, he worked alongside Triple H through some of his biggest moments, both in the ring and behind the scenes as an executive.
Right. So JR saw firsthand how Triple H earned those 5 Intercontinental Championship titles, the 2 Royal Rumble wins, all the rest. You can't just dismiss a career like that, like he's saying.
Exactly. And, Jim Ross is arguing that Triple H's talent and dedication, they speak for themselves. But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay, hit me.
Dave Meltzer, who's a well-respected wrestling journalist, he reported that Triple H essentially chose himself for the Hall of Fame.
Hold on, wait a minute. Is that allowed?
Well, I mean, he's the one calling the shots these days, right?
Yeah.
So I guess he kind of makes the rules.
So that's what's got people all riled up.
Yeah, because it kind of feeds into this long-held suspicion that maybe, just maybe, Triple H has always benefited from, his family ties, even though he was a phenomenal wrestler in his own right.
Yeah, for years there have been these rumors, these whispers swirling around about Triple H wielding power backstage, maybe even taking down a few rivals. It's the kind of stuff that wrestling fans, those hardcore fans who follow all the dirt sheets, the wrestling news outlets, they eat this stuff up.
Oh, yeah, it's wrestling's version of like inside baseball or something. Fans love to dissect those rumors and speculate about what really happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure. But in this case, it adds like another layer of complexity to this whole Triple H thing,
Totally. Because even if you acknowledge his incredible in-ring talent, the fact that he made this decision himself about the Hall of Fame, it just rubs some people the wrong way.
So we've got a guy, legendary career, powerful position, family legacy, and now he's inducted himself into the Hall of Fame. Is this like a victory lap for a true wrestling icon, or is it a power move that leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth?
It's a question that, it forces us to think about how much those personal connections really matter in wrestling,
Yeah.
And does this whole situation, does it tarnish the Hall of Fame itself? Like, what does this mean?
And that, my friend, is exactly why we're diving deep into this.
Because it's not just wrestling.
It's not. This is bigger than wrestling. This is about how we define success, how power plays into it, and how the people in charge, they shape the narratives we end up believing.
It's forcing us to ask some tough questions like, when does it cross that line into something less admirable?
And those are questions that go way beyond the ropes of a wrestling ring, right? It makes you wonder, are we all susceptible to these power dynamics, even outside the world of sports entertainment?
I think so, absolutely. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's circle back to Jim Ross for a second.
Okay, back to JR.
Remember, this is a guy who's seen it all. He's known Triple H for decades, worked with him at the peak of his career, and he's adamant. He is adamant that those who are criticizing this induction, they are way off base.
He's not holding back.
Not at all. He even goes so far as to say that they're embarrassing themselves by showing how little they truly know about Triple H and his journey.
So we've got Jim Ross on one side, staunchly defending Triple H's legacy, and on the other side, you've got fans and critics questioning the move, crying foul. So where do you stand on this? Is Triple H deserving of the Hall of Fame purely based on what he did in the ring, or does this feel like a power play that undermines the whole process?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's messy, it's controversial, and it forces us to, to really grapple with some uncomfortable truths about how power and perception, how they work in the world of pro wrestling, and maybe even, beyond that.
Exactly, and that's what makes this deep dive, it's just so fascinating. It's a real head scratcher, but it also gives us a chance to unpack these bigger issues that are relevant to all of us, even if we've never set foot in the wrestling ring ourselves.
Right, and it's important to remember there's no easy answer here,
Yeah.
but exploring those different perspectives, it can help us understand the situation better and maybe even challenge our own assumptions along the way.
Hmm.
Really makes you think about the ripple effects of this whole thing.
Like, are other wrestlers going to be too scared to say anything bad about Triple H now? I mean, he basically controls who gets into the Hall of Fame, right?
It's like who wants to get on the wrong side of the guy who decides if you get a bronze statue or not.
Seriously.
But it raises questions, about how objective those Hall of Fame decisions really are. Is it just about what a wrestler did in the ring? Or is it about, personal relationships, politics, all that stuff?
Okay, but let's try to see it from Triple H's perspective for a second. Maybe he's just, super confident. He believes he deserves this. He doesn't care what people on the internet are saying.
That's a good point. I mean, he's always been a master strategist, both in the ring and in the boardroom. Maybe he's just figured that this will all blow over and he'll still be a Hall of Famer at the end of the day.
So he's playing 4D chess while everyone else is going crazy on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe. And that's part of what makes this so interesting. There's so many ways to interpret it. It all comes down to, how much do you trust Triple H and how much do you believe in the whole Hall of Fame process?
Okay, but let's flip it around. What if? What if you were in charge of the Hall of Fame? Would you have inducted Triple H?
Honestly, it's a tough one if I'm just looking at what he did in the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a legend, no question. He deserves to be there with the greats.
Right.
But knowing everything else, the family connections, the potential for bias, it definitely complicates things.
So you'd hesitate.
I think I'd want to at least address it. Acknowledge the controversy, maybe have someone else introduce him, someone who could speak to his talent without all the extra baggage.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Like, bring out Shawn Michaels, his old buddy, to give the induction speech.
Right, someone who has that history with him. It would be a way to honor him while also acknowledging that, it's a complicated situation.
Yeah, because if they just ignore it completely, it would look like they're trying to sweep it under the rug.
Right, and that wouldn't be good for anyone. It would just erode trust even more.
This whole thing, it really makes you think about the Hall of Fame. Like, what's the point of it all anyway?
It's supposed to be about honoring the best of the best, right? Recognizing those who achieve greatness. But the reality is, it's always going to be subjective. Someone's got to make those decisions, and that means there's always the potential for bias.
Are you saying all Hall of Fames are messed up?
Not necessarily, but they're not perfect. They reflect the values of the people making the decisions, and those values, they can change over time, and that leads to debates and people reevaluating past choices and all that.
So what might be Hall of Fame worthy today? It might not be in 20 years.
Exactly. Standards change, perspectives change. What was once groundbreaking might become, normal, and then things that were overlooked in the past, they might get recognized later on.
So with Triple H, I mean, does all this mean he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame?
That's not for me to say. He definitely accomplished a lot in the ring, but
Yeah.
but this situation, it does make you question the process and how it all went down. Ultimately, it's up to history to decide how this affects his legacy.
Man, wrestling is so much more than just guys in tights throwing each other around.
Absolutely. It's athleticism, storytelling, business, and yeah, there's definitely politics involved.
In this Triple H situation, it's like all of those things rolled into one. It's a story about power, perception, and what we choose to believe.
It reminds us that even in wrestling, which seems so predetermined, there are still surprises, controversies, things that make you question everything you thought you knew.
It's almost like this whole thing, it's a storyline playing out in real life.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's one that has everyone talking just as much as any big championship match.
So where does this leave Triple H? I mean, how will this whole controversy, how will it affect his legacy in the long run?
That's the question, isn't it? It's something that, well, wrestling fans will be debating for years to come, and it's something that Triple H himself is going to have to deal with as he leads WWE.
Because like it or not, this Hall of Fame thing, it's going to be a part of his story forever.
It's a good example of how, your legacy, it's not just about what you do, but it's also about how you do it. And for Triple H, the the way he got into the Hall of Fame, it might actually overshadow his accomplishments.
That's got to sting, especially for a guy who's always been in control.
Yeah, it shows that even if you have a carefully built legacy, even a little bit of, impropriety can damage it.
And it shows how powerful perception can be, especially in wrestling, where image is everything.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, how will this chapter be remembered? Will it just be a footnote, a little blip in a long and successful career? Or will it make people question everything he's done?
I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, but this is definitely a story that people are going to keep talking about.
It feels less like a celebration of Triple H's career and more like, I don't know, like a warning.
Maybe it's both. It celebrates his talent, but it also shows that power, even when you earn it, you got to be careful with it.
Because perception is a powerful thing.
It is. And once you damage that perception, it's really hard to fix it.
So, what does this all mean for Triple H's future?
We'll have to see, but it reminds us that in wrestling, like in life, your actions have consequences.
And that even the people at the top, they can't escape the court of public opinion.
It shows how wrestling, even though it's all about entertainment, it can still reflect how complicated human nature can be.
Well said. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. It's been a wild ride exploring wrestling, legacy, and all the drama that comes with these Hall of Fame decisions.
It's a story about perception, legacy, and why people are so fascinated by wrestling. And I'm sure this won't be the last we hear about Triple H in the Hall of Fame.
Definitely not. But for now, dear listeners, we'll leave you with this. Don't just believe everything you read. Dig a little deeper, ask questions, and form your own opinions, because in wrestling, just like in life, things aren't always so simple.